The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 years, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists, Josh Shigala from the Standard.io, Robert Allen from Satlantis.io,
Hello.
and I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on to Issue 1. Issue 1, SEC takes aim at NFT marketplace OpenSea. OpenSea, which calls itself the world's largest non-fungible token marketplace, received a Wells notice from the SEC, the company said in a blog post Wednesday, indicating the regulator may soon bring a lawsuit against the company. It's rumored that the SEC believes that the NFTs, which are clearly collectibles, are actually securities or stock in a company. Robert Allen, what do you think about NFTs? Are they securities or collectibles?
I haven't looked at all the guidelines for the SEC designations lately, but it doesn't make sense to me to call them securities. They're not fungible. So right, typically you would be selling X amount of shares in a company, so that shows that you have a percentage of ownership. You can't do that with non-fungible tokens. They're generally, that means they're like one of one, right? So yeah, I think
They can be a lot of different variations, but they usually have a dog or a cat or a picture on them. They're not usually in the form of like a Veribond or a Microsoft stock certificate, right?
sure. Yeah, I think it's a stretch for sure. I don't get it.
Josh Agala, what do you think about the SEC going after OpenSea and claiming that NFTs are securities? Nope, still technical problems for Josh. Well, obviously, this is a tough question for me to answer because I'm personally involved, having worked on curio cards at least back in 2017, hadn't really worked after the 2017 date. But of course, when we made our blockchain items, we called them digital collectibles. And we were very clear about them being blockchain collectibles or digital collectibles is mainly what we called them. We released them at $1 a piece with the at your own risk, you send Ethereum to a smart contract, you get back a curio card. It's kind of the end of our part in the transaction. And as far as what we did, we put all the cards in the machines. So we didn't have any further cards, and that was pretty much it for us. So I really think those are collectibles, and they're going to have a hard time proving that otherwise. OpenSea, however, is a billion-dollar company that raised hundreds of millions of dollars in venture capital. So I can see why they're getting more thorough test. And despite falling behind in the marketplace recently, I think they still have a bunch of money, and I think they can buy a bunch of lawyers, and this could be a big point for them to perhaps save the NFT marketplace from this kind of onerous legislation here. What do you think, Robert? Will OpenSea come through and save the NFT marketplace?
Yeah, I think if I had to bet, I'd say they'd win.
Well, I sure hope so. And again, I see them as a firewall, people with money, people with lawyers that can get this explained in court. Because sure, we can talk about it here and I can say ours are collectibles, they're called collectibles. But then there's other ones, like for example, I'd say the Bored Ape Yacht Club, where having that collectible is more of a membership card. And it lets you into a party or it gives you a discount on a shop. And it has perhaps monetary value. And that becomes slightly different than just a collectible like a baseball card or a Beanie Baby where you personally value it. And if you can find someone to give you $100 for it, it's worth $100 on that day. If you find someone gives you $1,000, great deal, take it. But so on and so forth. It's really interesting to see how NFTs, a signature basically on the blockchain, it can be so many things. Go ahead, Robert.
Right. Yeah, I think that yeah, I don't know. I don't see how they can win if you have a reasonable judge. Even with like a Bored Ape, the Bored Ape example that you gave, uh, I mean, if you buy like, something that gives you rights to be in a club, that's sort of like you bought a membership. I mean, that still to me is very far from shared interest in a venture that is promising you returns. And I mean, I forget all of the Howey test stuff, but it doesn't ring anywhere close to that from my recollection.
Well, and we had this with the early ERC20 tokens when everyone was making quote unquote ICOs, initial coin offerings, but really they seemed a lot more, and again, case by case basis here, a lot more like stock offerings. They're like, we have a company, we have a team, we have a roadmap, we're going to do these things if you give us the money, which will make the token go up in value because people will use the token to do the thing. And that's how we're going to make money, and that's how you're going to make money. And that's much more like a stock. I really think that these artists releasing these items or these cartoons or whatever, it could be used for a membership card. It could be used as a stock. The interesting thing about crypto is its endless reusability, especially even like you're saying, like ours, we made it a big deal where we were like, I want them to be 1.0. I don't want half a curio card. I don't want a tenth of a curio card. Either I have one or I don't have one. And they can actually break that by putting another contract on top of your contract, then breaking up your curio card or your NFT of any kind into pieces, making it perhaps more like an investment vehicle, but that has nothing to do with the original NFT or their intention.
Interesting. I didn't realize. So you're saying they are doing that now with NFTs where they'll sell fractional ownership of one NFT. Okay. Yeah, I mean
Some
that
of,
gets
some of them, like the crypto pumps, are so incredibly valuable for
mm,
one person to own one. It makes more sense, and it might be a good investment. You never know if you
mm,
split it up amongst 100 or even 1,000 people.
right. Interesting. Yeah, that makes it a little more complicated because when you've got fractional ownership, that does look a little more like a traditional investment in a company, I would say. But yeah, I don't know. I think the other thing I would say on this point is it might depend a bit on how did the seller or the marketplace present, these things. Because if they are presenting them, um, in the sense of, hey, this is an investment and, you can get returns on this and right. So if they're marketing them more in that direction, that might open the door more for the SEC to come in. So, but I don't know. I'm not an expert on the law in this regard, and so
There is a famous case going on right now with Logan Paul, the famous YouTuber and boxer, who also released a product called Crypto Zoo, which claimed a lot of these NFT things and what a game it was going to be and how you're going to make money and you could breed the animals. And I don't want to get into the details because he's suing everybody that talks about this, but allegedly, I don't think they finished the game. And a lot of people thought they were going to make money and didn't make money. And he promised a refund. I don't think he's delivered the refund, but he's suing CoffeeZilla, the major anti-scam crypto YouTuber in the business. But again, it's all over these NFTs and it's all over this idea that you could make tons of profits. And I think, from the outside, just looking at it, maybe he and his people got greedy, but then the people who also invested in this, they got greedy as well, and they expected returns where maybe they wouldn't be returns.
yeah. I mean, I tend to lean more in the direction of a libertarian approach to these sorts of things, where I feel like the market will ultimately work if you allow people, and that does mean that people get burned. But the best way to learn a hard lesson is to walk away from the stove with a burn. You're not going to go back again. So, rather than trying to insulate everyone in bubble wrap, I think in the end we're probably better off as a society if the government is less involved in these sorts of things, and you allow people to, you know, knock their head against the wall and learn a hard lesson and hopefully wise up. So that's in other words, I'm not a big fan of the SEC or any of these entities. I think they're far overreaching, generally speaking. And I would also argue that they're going after these big like OpenSea because there's a lot of money there. So I'm sure they're looking to take a pound of flesh. Um, yeah, I don't have a lot of sympathy for the SEC. I'll just say it that way.
It is also very unfortunate how they often seem to be chasing after the crime, whereas Chris DeRose and others exposed OneCoin in real time, going into their meetings with hidden cameras, showing people what a bad investment it would be. Other people like CoffeeZilla expose this crypto zoo. Many other YouTubers call everything a scam, sometimes in great detail. Years later, the British government freezes the OneCoin assets. Years later, they're investigating this crypto zoo project. It's a lot like a red light camera. Someone pulling someone over and telling them don't speed sometimes has an effect on them, where maybe for the next couple days or weeks they won't speed. Whereas a red light camera takes a picture of them speeding, gives them a bill later, but doesn't have any effect on them. If their speeding is going to cause an accident 3 lights down, pulling them over, saying, hey, slow down, might have an effect, whereas the camera just raises money. And sadly, and I think Robert would agree, the SEC mainly seems to be doing the money raising part. Obviously, OpenSea is a fat target here. Josh Shigala, are you back with us? What do you think about the SEC saying that NFTs are securities?
Man, the SEC, the SEC, like you said, they just come after the fact, like they run in like really fat cops. After the crime, it's like 6 years old, and I don't know. Someone
It's
knew
like that South Park guy, Captain Obvious. Like he's always there. He's like, a crime has been committed here.
Yeah, yeah. Except in the house, there's a brand new family. A baby's been born. That family's already moved out. A new family's moved in. A new baby's been. They're sitting there watching TV. Suddenly, the fat cop comes barging through the door with a whole bunch of. There were right hands up. Like what? What? Yeah, 6 years ago, there was a crime committed here. It just that they are so hopeless and so daft. The funny thing is that the tech industry in general, I mean, San Francisco, you could say Eric Schmidt was on this podcast. It was quite famously broadcast a couple of weeks ago, where he got up and talked. I've forgotten where it was. Some university lecture, and he basically said, "Look, what you do as a startup is you break all the laws and get away from, as and no one's watching, and then." Afterwards, when you've made all the money, you collect all the lawyers and clean up the mess afterwards. And if you can't, then it just goes away, and you're not big enough anyway, so it doesn't matter. And that's how we sort of run things here in Silicon Valley. And so you've got Eric Schmidt on one side saying that that's how tech works, and that's why these large language models and such can just basically steal everybody's work, or steal, whatever you want to call it. You train on everybody's work, and then after the fact go in and say, hey, you know, um, lawyer up, blokes. It all worked. It all worked. We're making a shed ton of money here. So let's pay off, and then meanwhile, you've got these agencies, which is so dumb, just going here, here, and what do they do with the money after they find? Do any of the victims, like in these so-called crime sprees, these victimless crime sprees, some of them aren't victimless, but most of them are. What do they get? Do they get any of the payoff that the SEC go around in their palm? Nah, they don't. Does any of the money go to educating the public on what a scam looks like? Nah. Who gets paid? Nah, I don't know. It just goes off to I guess more war zones, or to fund more things. I don't know where the money goes actually. So maybe maybe they burn it. I don't know. But yeah, that's that's my take. Take that to the bank.
Well, not that we should have pity on the SEC, but I do think they have an impossible job. They're under assault by mice. Think of it, hundreds, thousands, breeding. Maybe they're more like roaches, and they have no chance. And I've been saying this since the beginning with Napster, MP3s, videos, newspaper, television, everything. We're digitizing things, right? We're digitizing the finance market now. We're digitizing money. Against what we really wanted to do originally. Apparently, we're digitizing all the penny scams and penny stocks and all the investment vehicles and all the nonsense that there used to be in the world. We're going to digitize that too, apparently. But they just have no chance, and they're, again, playing whack-a-mole like the FBI, like the anti-drug forces, like so many other forces. I think they're well-meaning. They just have a bad goal, and it's impossible. and they don't know how to tell their boss, like, hey boss, like, we can't do this. Like, if we smash up all
Well,
these things, there's just going to be more of them. Like, I think even they kind of know at this point. Go ahead, Josh.
yeah, but it's like saying like there's a regulator for publishing or something, and that regulator, when the internet popped up, going, there's billions of website sites jumping online every day, new ones. We'll regulate them all. Like it's just daft, guys. Just stop. Just stop. You're making fools of yourselves. It's an impossible task. It's not even funny. You're actually destroying value by the vast amounts, and people are going elsewhere. Companies are going elsewhere, and no matter what you do, they'll go elsewhere. And then Americans will bypass, the clever ones will bypass any blocks to use services that are useful anyway. Or if they are outright scammed, they'll eventually get scammed. Hey, SE, why not go after the millions and millions and millions of dollars that are lost through actual scams, through SMS and phone scams, and people saying that you owe money to the taxes and go, please pay with the Amazon gift voucher. Like there's endless money being lost by the elderly on a daily. If oh, we're not tasked to actually take on that challenge. No, you're tasked to take on the internet, where people can create a meme coin or create an image on an NFT. I'm not saying none of those are scams, but I'm just saying, guys, we all know that we're buying some shit coin here. Like we all know. Um, and there are some real outright scams, but guess what? The free market whittles those out eventually. And the free market teaches people what they look like. So if you don't like that, then you won't buy it next time. People lose their shirts. It's part of reality. What do you reckon, Robert? Is that?
Yeah, I was saying, I think before you came back in, basically the same thing. I think people have to learn hard lessons sometimes, trying to make them into bubble boys and pretend the government's going to protect everyone. Generally just means, like you said, the government shows up after the fact. They make some money for themselves and their agency. The victims never get any money out of the deal, and it's just a show. Most of what the government does is to try to pretend that they should be there and that they're providing value, when in fact they're just parasitical. They're just leeching off of society, and this is true everywhere. I mean, like, here I'm in Nigeria now, and my phone's pickpocketed. We go to the police. Of course, they can't do anything. I mean.
Yeah.
And they have no incentive. It's the same everywhere. So yeah, I mean, no one's coming to save you, at least in terms of humans. So yeah, don't expect any help from the governments of this world.
Right. And if
We
you're
also,
getting into this space, learn about it, learn about it, learn about it, learn about it. Watch shows like this, understand what scams look like, because they come in all flavors and colors, and you want to be wary because you don't want to be scammed.
Yeah,
it's
it sounds too good. It's probably too good to be true. And also I think, I mean, the government I mean, most states have a lottery, right? So, you know, I mean, people are desperate. When people they perceive that they have no hope, they're more likely to be desperate with how they use their money. And so in other words, I would say, I think a lot of this sort of crypto NFT mania is the fact that, this is after 100 years of debased monetary policy, destroying the currency. And so people no longer understand saving. They really no longer understand investing. So when you're hopeless, you are more willing and more likely to just, I'll just gamble it, right? I mean, I got nothing to lose. And so I think that sort of gambler's mentality comes from a poverty mindset, and a lot of that is due to the government's policies. So the government, again, has kneecapped society, has broken our legs, and then they want to come in and act like they're helping us by regulating, these scams. Oh, it's the scams. Those are the bad guys. I mean, it's like, no, the real criminals are in Washington.
It's also worth noting the phase that we're at. In the old days, if you wanted to make your own coin, you had to copy Litecoin, change the name to Litecoin 2, set up a mining network, have computers mine it, do all this stuff. Now, if you want a coin, you go to pump.fun, and I don't know, but allegedly, I think you fill out a form, upload an image, and boom, you make a coin right there. In the same way, back in my day, if you wanted to make an NFT, you had to design it, have a programmer do all this stuff. Now you just go to OpenSea, upload an image, boom, it's an NFT. So the scale of the thing that they're fighting and the thing that they're calling a crime, it's just out of control. I think they're gonna have a really hard time. It's like calling a video cast a crime. Like every single frame of this video is a crime, or every single tweet, every single word is a crime. I think they're just gonna have a really hard time. Before we move on, let's go to a really quick exit question. Who will win? One word, SEC or OpenSea? Josh Shigala.
I don't know. Hard to know. It's always random. It depends if they pay, who they pay, how much they pay.
Robert Allen, Josh has pushed. What will you choose, SEC or OpenSea?
Well, I think you said OpenSea has a lot of money in their coffers, so I'm guessing they can buy off the SEC. So they'll win in the end. But they'll have to, kiss some butts and say they're sorry or pretend that something has changed.
I've really thought about this and have thought about this since 2017 that collectibles are one of the most innocuous ways to get Bitcoin to people. Oh, you don't like Bitcoin, it's too complicated. Have a collectible coin, have a Doge coin, have a meme coin, whatever you like. Try that out, get really involved in that, have it lose all your money and then fail, then come back to Bitcoin. And that's always been, I think, a really good way to bring people in. And as far as I can tell, a really legal way of using the collectible system. Because certainly if you make your own stock, if you make your own company, you're involved in the legal system. So I think that OpenSea will win. I think the SEC has gone too far. But I do think they're also in an impossible position. And look at what they're up against. They have no chance. Moving on to issue 2. El Salvador President Nayib Bukele makes the cover of Time magazine. As it says here, according to Bitcoin Magazine, we call it the Great Rebranding. It was genius. We could have paid millions to a PR firm to rebrand El Salvador. Instead, we just adopted Bitcoin, said an advisor. And here's the cover from Time magazine. It says, how El Salvador President Nayib Bukele becomes the world's most popular authoritarian, the strong man. And in a very long article that I did read, Bukele goes back and forth. At some points, I kind of agree with him. At other points, I think he's gone too far. He seems very philosophical, although the whole philosopher king, that whole thing, anyone who would want to be king shouldn't be king. And unfortunately, he wants to be king. Robert Allen, what do you think? We've talked about El Salvador before. At this point, they have doubled their money on Bitcoin, so the narrative has switched. Whereas before we would say, oh, they've lost half their money. Now they've doubled up. So is everything fine? Success solves all problems?
Well, I made it down to El Salvador now 3 times since Bukele became president. And I've seen some progress, I would say, since the first time I went versus the subsequent trips in a good direction. I mean, I think you talk to the average Salvadorian, and they were basically incarcerated in their own homes due to gang violence. So president went in and cleaned it up, and now it's, I think, the safest country in maybe all of the Americas, if not definitely Latin America, but possibly all of the Americas at this point. So yeah, I think he's doing a great job. I think he's been under attack by leftist propaganda machines like the Time magazine and others for obvious reasons. I mean, he's promoting Bitcoin, which is completely antithetical to socialist, liberal, leftist, whatever you want to call it, policy and thinking. And I'm a big fan. Yeah, I don't see any problems at all with him. I don't think he's an authoritarian or a dictator or anything like that. Now, I would say that El Salvador would probably be better off if he did just stay as a dictator for the next 30 years. If you read, what is it, Democracy, the God That Failed by Hans Hermann Hoppe, very good book, excellent read, highly, highly recommended. He makes a really strong case for the idea that, basically monarchy is not all that bad, actually, when you look at it. That it's gotten a bad rap, and that and I would even say you look, in modern times, look at the Middle East right now. Look at the Saudi princes. I mean, those are some of the safest, nicest countries to live in. Granted, not 100% great everything that goes on there, but that's probably true just about anywhere else. So, yeah, I mean, I'd say if Bukele became dictator for life, I'd probably move there.
Well, as I said, it was a very long article, but one of the parts that I liked is he said that he's not planning on running again. He said he has a conversation with his wife. She said no. So it will be very interesting if he does leave power after his term's over. However, there's other parts of the article that I didn't like, where he said that his party had 90% of the people behind them, plus another 5% delivered by coalition, giving them 95% of the population supporting them. There were no other parties, no other voices. It just doesn't seem like a healthy democratic conversation, and might not last if he tries to hand down power to the next successor. Josh Shigala, what do you think about Nayib Bukele, especially now that they've made money, which, according to American capitalism, means that their project of Bitcoin was successful?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of like dictatorships or monarchies and such, but um, I I am a fan of safe and secure life, and look, he's managed to make that. He's managed to do that because I do know El Salvadorians who have said it was a complete nightmare. It was a complete nightmare before, and now it's very, very good. And so, of course, you have a dictator. They can swing both ways. They can make something terrible and be power hungry, like something like North Korea, where they don't have any idea. They're terrible. They just want more and more power for them and their family, um, and they want to crush any dissent whatsoever. They don't like the idea of and the problem is that if you want to be king for for forever, and if you have a mindset that your ideas are so good and everyone else is bad, you tend not to get any feedback. And then when you don't get any feedback, you start going down crazy la la land, and you make very, very bad mistakes, and then people suffer, and so on and so forth. Where the the price feedback that markets give you and that elections give you, at least. I mean, I'm not even the biggest fan of democracy, to be quite frank, but um, specifically free markets give you a lot of feedback. Free markets and the price mechanism gives you feedback. Things like insurance allows for people to have it's sort of a welfare system where if you fall down, you can insure against that. There are mechanisms, of course, we haven't seen it for a while, a truly free market, but maybe Bukele, I don't know where we're going with his project there, but Robert is right with some of the other states that have fairly close to dictatorships, or some of the kingdoms at least. Um, some of them are great, and some of them are terrible. So the problem is, if they're terrible, it's extremely hard to change that because the strong man has full and utter control. So if they're terrible, if they turn terrible, it's really, really difficult. So yeah, I'm always in two minds about it.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm glad that Bukele's now in the green.
that's fair, but I would also counter and say that a lot of failed democratic countries are also stuck in perpetual decline, because they basically have a oligarchy of sorts that is controlling the country, and the elections are rigged. And, so it goes pretty badly in a lot of so-called democracies as well. I would just highlight, I think the strongest thing that I would take from Hoppe's book is, the argument that a king, because he is basically the owner of, what would normally be like, government lands, common lands, those are the king's property. He tends to think longer term, right? He's thinking in terms of stewarding, or at least in a good scenario. And Hoppe also argues that you need to have a strong, like, aristocratic class that ultimately can check the king. And so if the guy gets crazy, they off him. So you do need, it's not just like, it can go badly. I don't think he's naive enough to say that it can never go badly. But the benefit of having a dynasty or a family that is thinking in decades and centuries, there's a lot of benefit to that for the populace at large, because they're not thinking, hey, let me just rob this country for the next 4 years, make my stuff my pockets, and then I'm out of here, which is unfortunately, sadly, what I think we've seen in a lot of democratic nations in my lifetime, is this sort of
Yeah,
pilfering.
and I would say, and I'm sure Thomas has got a lot to say on this as well, but I would say that this is what Vance meant when he mentioned childless cat ladies years ago. It was he was basically saying, I want my politicians, my leaders, to have an investment in the future by having children, because then they're invested in having a better country for for his children to grow up in, or their children, for the
Yeah.
leaders' children to grow up in. And that's all he meant. Saying childless cat lady is a bit crass and stuff, but that's I think where that was going. Yeah.
Well, and I do think this is where it would go, where it does get a little about children and being paternal, where if there was a class of elites that's leading our society, they would probably defend it like the way you guys have said, where we are doing the best for society, our decisions are the best. But then there's this other question of, whenever you're doing anything in the dark and you're hiding the reason for it, it becomes, why are you hiding the reason for it? If it was a fine thing, why not just do it in the public? Why do it in the dark? And then we get back into that loop again. However, going back to Bukele, to me, reading the interview, and again, I haven't listened to it, I think it was in Spanish, so on and so forth, it seems that he really does know everything and that he's going to solve your problems. And I do think he knows a lot. I am very impressed with the article and the interview that he gave, but I don't think he knows everything. But I do think that's a reason why he could run again, because he says, oh, I wasn't going to run, and even my wife said no, but I know everything, and I'm the only one that can solve your problems, therefore I have to keep being dictator. And then pretty soon his son knows everything. I do agree it looks good now. We're in the middle of the dictatorship period. I hope it ends well. I fear, again, as we've said many times on the show, that none of these dictatorships end well. They don't have a good transition to the next crew, so you could have a very bad crew coming in, or it could just train wreck into a bad dictator. And again, I do think we're going to eventually we'll answer that question, how many Bitcoins fit in a briefcase? And it's going to be all of them. But let's keep moving. Check out the World Crypto Network at worldcryptonetwork.com. According to the webpage, we have 3,935 videos. That's pretty cool at worldcryptonetwork.com. Moving on to issue 3, how Trump was, quote, orange pilled by 3 Bitcoiners in Puerto Rico and the promise of $100 million. CNBC has the full story, how David Bailey and 2 others in Puerto Rico worked together to meet with Trump, promising him $100 million in donation and 5 million votes if he accepts crypto into his heart. Unfortunately, it looks like Trump, as so many in the past have done with Bitcoin, he's sailed right past Bitcoin and has created his own DeFi platform. As the article says, Trump punts on promise to deliver a plan to make U.S. crypto capital of the planet, instead rebranding the defiant ones to World Liberty Financial, which sounds like a great place to buy and sell DeFi products and give Trump some sweet, sweet fees. So there's more on this, but Josh Shigala, what do you think about the attempt to bring Trump into Bitcoin? Was it successful? He's now doing DeFi. And of course, he made a new round of NFTs.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think it's a good thing. The more people in, the better. The more people can push back against nonsense regulation. Um, I mean, you know, it's hard to know. I think competition is competition. Um, you know, he's a businessman. He's going to see opportunity, and and yeah, I mean, I think if he's got skin in the game, he's got then skin in the game to make sure that other people can um, also have skin in the game, because that's how he gets wealthier. Yeah.
Robert Allen, they went for the man on the top. They got him on board at least for a little bit. Now he's kind of wandered off. What do you think about going after Trump and trying to get him to become pro Bitcoin?
Well, like everyone, you don't get Bitcoin the first time you hear about it. And a lot of people, myself included here, have fallen into all sorts of shitcoiny rabbit holes in our time. So I try not to be too judgmental and too harsh with people. I think it's overall great. I mean, if Trump is going to be supportive of cryptocurrency, even if he, doesn't quite get Bitcoin, that's still a big positive for Bitcoin. I think it's great for him to, if he's got some sort of financial interest in selling crypto assets or whatever, wonderful, right? So, that means he's going to be aligned with us. I saw him speak at the Bitcoin conference in Nashville, not in person, but I watched it. It was a little bit underwhelming, but I'm encouraged that RFK has come out in support of him now. And RFK's speech at Bitcoin 2024 was excellent, and he really, I think, gets it and is a Bitcoiner, I would say. From everything he said, I think he's genuine, and he was quite articulate, and I think he understands like the high level reasons why we need Bitcoin. He talked about the trucker protests in Canada and some of the crazy authoritarian stuff that's gone on up there, the need for a money that is not controllable by governments and so on and so forth. So yeah, I'm very excited. I think, Trump he's a what, 80-some-year-old man. I mean, to expect that he's going to get all this right away, I think is a bit of a stretch, but he's not actively fighting us. He's got RFK with him. So yeah, Trump 2024, baby. I'm going to be voting for him. First time I voted, I think, for president in my life, but I'm going to do it. I'm pulling the trigger.
Well, I do think they offered him a great package, as it says here at CNBC, $100 million and 5 million votes. So I think that most policy proposals you would accept for this. And I just disagree with the way they're spending their money here. I think they're shooting for the top instead of the bottom. They're kind of acting like nouveau riche, right? Like they just got money and they're going to make a big splash. They're going to get the president to become a Bitcoiner. And I think that if they shoot and miss, which is my prediction, that they get nothing. We talked about this last week with RFK Jr. They shot, they missed, they get nothing. As it shows here in this ancient cartoon from Punch, the vote auction, that's not the way you buy votes. If you want to buy votes, my suggestion would be to start at the bottom of this chart in either the House of Representatives or in the states, as we look at this diagram of the federal government and American Union. However, there is another side, and I'm not sure about their policy either. It says here that Coinbase and Ripple have donated more than $114 million to a PAC called Fair Shake, and that the Fair Shake PAC, here's their webpage here, it's all about donating. You can join us, as it says in their About Us, literally the only text on their webpage. Fair Shake supports candidates committed to securing the United States as the home to innovators building the next generation of internet, providing blockchain innovators the ability to develop their networks under a clearer regulatory and legal framework is vital if the broader open blockchain economy is to grow to its full potential here in the United States. Fair Shake is a federally independent expenditure-only committee registered with the Federal Election Commission and supports candidates solely through its independent activities. Well, I do agree with that. In reading more into the article, it sounds like there's two sides here. One side believes, as I do, that they should be supporting both sides, Democrats and the Republicans. The other side seems to be led by Brian Armstrong and others who, according to the article, are actually Trump supporters, and they believe that it's okay to target Democrats that don't support crypto and take them out. Let's go to Josh Shigala. What do you think about the two approaches towards spending money? One of them at the top with the president, one of them at the bottom, and the general idea that I think we need both parties. We need Republicans and Democrats, and I think it's short-sighted when we go after only one side. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one with the U.S. election at the moment. I see it so rigged, kind of. I really do, and I don't mean that in the traditional rigging sense. I mean so much jiggery pokery, specifically using the justice system, and then just there's so much so much little underhanded stuff going on, and so. You know, it's just the other side to the game where money just flows in, and people say you know, I used to think, oh, the money should go out of politics, the money out of politics, get money out of politics, but you can't. It's impossible to get the money out of politics, even if you made it illegal to you know, give politicians money, then you would just sponsor your own ads if you're really into one guy. You would just go, instead of sending the money to the politicians who then, you know, send it to the television networks and to the ad networks, which is basically where all the money goes. Like all the money goes into campaigning and ads. And so instead of just sending it to the politician first, why not just send it direct to the ads? And that's what would happen. So it's always going to be there. You have to be popular. You have to be popular, and then you will attract the money. You know, you have to have popular things that the money wants, and then you'll attract the money. It is what it is. And Bitcoiners are more, you know, traditionally more libertarian, traditionally more anarchist. So they'll head towards a more friendlier environment, for maybe Bitcoin. So I would say if the if the Democrats actually wanted some of the big sweet Bitcoiners to come across, then they should actually have some policy. You know, actually some policy, let alone some Bitcoin policy, but they should show some strong Bitcoin policy, and then they might attract some of that value, some of that money.
It was at the very end of the piece, but they did say that Coinbase and others had been meeting with Kamala Harris's team and that they were encouraged by the meetings, which again, I think we can do this with both sides. I think
Yeah.
there's people on both sides that'll disagree, but there's also people that will agree and they'll see the positive nature of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Let's go to Robert. What do you think about the different approaches, aiming for the top, aiming for the bottom, or if we need both sides?
Oh boy. Yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying about you know, looking for state reps and trying to get people. I mean, you know, that activity's been happening. You've got Cindy, what was it? Cindy, what's her name? The woman from
I think Cynthia Loomis from Wyoming
yeah,
is
that's
a
it.
senator.
Cynthia, yeah. So you got Lummis, you've got a couple others in Congress. I think it's going to continue to percolate on those levels, but unfortunately, the United States has become extremely top heavy in the last 50, 100 years in terms of the federal government and the executive branch wielding a lot of power. So that's the world we're in. And I think it is probably wise to try to get Trump into office. I don't know if the United States can survive another 4 years of the Democrats at this point. Yeah, so I think it's an existential threat, and I think we do need Trump. I mean, of course, if you know, if those who are on that side, the Democrat side, can try to promote Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and get support, great. You know, I don't see it happening in large part there. You know, they've been pretty antagonistic under the Biden administration. And you know, and like, I mean, they had a chance. You know, RFK would have run as a Democrat if they had given him the time of day, but they didn't, which I think was quite stupid. But that party has really, I think, been taken over by, you know, deep state interests. So I don't see it. Yeah, I think there's a small group of people that are calling the shots, and that's basically it.
Well, we'll have to see how it turns out. I think, unfortunately, we're probably going to have to keep talking about politics every week until the American election here in November. Let's move on to issue four. Issue four. Institutional investors continue to increase digital asset allocation. According to a report by OKX, it shows a growing number of institutional investors are examining new digital asset products for their portfolios. So we are continuing to see growth. Also, according to Cryptonews, Bitcoin price near a bottom as hash price lows echo pre-2021 bull run patterns. The price of Bitcoin may rise in the future. Let's go back to Robert here. What do you think about the price of Bitcoin and the continued institutional investment that may be driving it now?
Mhm. Well, I think it's gonna go up, go down, and then go up again, and then come down, and then it'll go up some more. I don't know. At this point, thankfully it doesn't bother me too much, whatever the price is. I think I've become immune to worrying about it or to even really thinking about it anymore. I guess that's what happens when you've been around for long enough. So grateful to God for that. We're all getting old in this chat here. But no, yeah, I'm expecting a pretty big move in the next 6 months. That would seem to fit the pattern. So, gun to my head, I would think that we're poised for another breakout here sooner than later. But, of course, Bitcoin can always surprise you. So don't go leveraging up, stay humble, stack
Well,
sat. As
and
Odell.
if you are confused, we have the source of all knowledge right here, which will tell you how to trade, of course, at your own risk. Josh Segala, what do you think about the institutional investments and the price of Bitcoin?
Yeah, so it is something that people love to talk about the price. Obviously, it's the constant, the volatility, and people love that. I have seen an uptick in positivity around the price in terms of articles being written, tweets being written about this sort of we're reaching the bottom, even though we're kind of, been it's kind of been this 58K sort of thing that's just been bouncing around 58K for ages. I do feel towards Christmas, people get, Christmas bonuses, they chuck it into Bitcoin. It tends to somehow, I don't know if that's the reason, but it tends after Christmas, to sort of just before Christmas and after Christmas to sort of then start going for it. And Bitcoin's one of these trains that once it gets going, people see it going, oh, I'm going to miss it again. This is it. And then they jump in and then they pile in. And then when it's like really high, the news will start talking about it properly and just never get it off the screen. So more and more people just hear about it all the time. They end up putting their money in and then losing their shirts right at the end. So if you are here now, DCA is the rule. Just dollar cost average every week. Put a little in. Don't worry about the price. And if you need, like our friend Starship Schrodinger's Destiny here, if you need to renovate your bathroom, then you need to renovate your bathroom. Then you need to sell some. It just is what it is. Life is what it is. Have both feet in Bitcoin. That's my advice. Don't have one foot out and one foot in. Just live in Bitcoin. If you need to pay for something, then you cash out some, put it in there. But if you get income, put it back into Bitcoin. It's not financial advice. None of this stuff on this show is financial advice. It's all educational and fun. But that's my 2 cents. Take that to the bank and smoke.
I can only hope that my friend in England finished his bathrooms. He had an unfinished floorboard, so he just had those in between spacers, and you could fall down the holes. And he's like, "Yeah, next bull run, I'll get it done." And you know how hard it is. No one wants to sell their Bitcoin, but you got to have floors in your bathroom. You got to have toilets that work. You got to have these basic things. But I agree with you, Josh. There's an interesting point in the price where it starts to get stuck. I think it was around 25 or 30K it was stuck for a long time. 10K it was stuck. Even maybe $1,000 it was stuck. And everyone's like, oh, it's going to be 58K forever. And they go and they find some other more exciting investment to buy instead of Bitcoin. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it jets up
Rocket.
or it jets down. We have no idea. except for the Magic 8 Ball, which we're now going to ask. Prediction for the future. Let's see, Josh Agala, will the price be higher or lower this time next week?
Let's go with higher. I'm going bull,
Let's go
bull,
to
bull.
Robert Allen, higher or lower?
Always higher for Bitcoin.
That's what I say. And also on the last one, yeah, Josh is right. All the articles are about price. You're lucky we can talk about anything else on this show, because when I Google for articles, it's like different variations of how we can talk about the price. But only the 8 Ball truly knows the price. So I don't know why they bother. Here we go. Will the price be higher this time next week? Get a good shake, cause some bubbles. Here we go. It says, hard to read. Outlook good. Outlook good. So the price will go higher next week. We're running out of stories. Let's go to prediction or the story of the week. Josh Agala, do you have a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
My story of the week is we are auditing the new smart contracts that we've written right now with Cypherin. Cypherin's one of the largest auditors. They came originally from the Chainlink team. They realized that a lot of these smart contracts were being hacked, so they've started their own auditing firm. And while they are very, 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 very knowledgeable. We used them last time in a competitive audit, which is basically a competition with hundreds of auditors. But this time, for speed's sake, we're using the private audit version of their service. And so this is really exciting because we've been working hard to upgrade or to release our next one, because you can't really upgrade smart contracts. They're kind of like hardware. Once you've made them and they're out there, they just you can't change them. So it's very, very exciting. What the main feature that we're working for is that people can upload their own collateral into their own smart vaults without giving up their private keys, and then borrow against that, so that you don't need to ever use or trust someone like Celsius or BlockFi or this sort of nonsense. We can just put your collateral into a smart contract, lock it. You are the only one with a key, and then you can mint new currency. What we've just upgraded is that, hey, all this collateral is just sitting there. Why can't it go and work in automated market makers to earn some yield? We can track that value using Chainlink, and so you can still use it as collateral. And so that way you can actually have collateral, you can borrow against that collateral and have a yield, and then you don't get hit with capital gains because you haven't sold anything yet. You've just borrowed against your own savings. So that's the hope. Coming soon. Keep an eye on the standard.io, join the Discord, check it out.
That sounds fantastic, Josh. People should check it out. Let's go to Robert Allen. What are you up to? Do you have a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I'll catch everyone up on my life since last time. I can't remember if it's been maybe a year, give or take. So I think the last time we were close to launching the Bitcoin and Friends series, a relaunch. Sad to report that it's basically piddled out. I think we have, I don't know, 10, 20,000 views on YouTube. I mean, it's a fraction of the original viewership. So I don't know. It just didn't work, sadly. But everything you do in life is not guaranteed to be a success. So that's okay. You
And
continue.
animation is hard. I come from an animation background
Yeah.
originally. Yeah, I was a
It is,
very
I'm
early
sure.
3D animator, so it's hard.
Well, I think the quality is decent. Like I'm proud of it. We just didn't quite get the traction. I think some of it was the original series had sort of like, kind of I don't know, it was kind of crass, and I think it kind of hit certain people in a certain way and they liked it. This one we tried to clean it up and make it more PG, but I think the old audience wanted the old crass version, so they didn't like it, and we didn't reach like the new PG audience, and so I don't know, we just missed it. But anyway, but it's on YouTube. Check it out. I'm still proud of it. I think it's good. So yeah, anyway, since then I've gotten more and more interested in Nostr or Nostr, depending on how you like to say that. And for those who maybe aren't familiar, this is a new Bitcoin inspired protocol, I'd say, because all the cryptography is used, it's basically the same crypto primitives that are used to build Bitcoin. public-private key cryptography, and so on. There's no blockchain, there's nothing to buy, but it is a protocol for communication. It's being used to build social network-like experiences, like similar to Twitter. Couple good clients that I would say to check out. I really like Primal. Primal.net is pretty decent. There's Damus on iOS as well. Amethyst on Android, people like. So it's interesting because, you know, these applications are all interoperable. All these notes or events, as they're called, you know, you can post on one platform and find it on another. So in some ways, it's kind of analogous, I would say, to how, you know, if you have an email client, like let's say Gmail, right? You can send someone who's on Yahoo an email because they're using SMTP. So imagine that sort of idea, but applied to social media using public-private key crypto. So you know that every event that you see is signed and, you know, unforgeable, and the public key that created that event is in fact the private key that signed it. So it really has, you know, kind of just engulfed my brain. And I would say since Bitcoin, this is probably the first time where I really had one of these epiphanies that I think this is a technology that needs to succeed. Whether or not it will remains to be seen. But if we want communication that can't be throttled by governments and dictators and people who want us to shut up, it's phenomenal. So I've gotten involved in a project with Alexander Svetsky. Some people may know him, and it's called Satlantis. So check it out, satlantis.io. We're still in the middle of developing it, so be patient. But the basic idea is, you know, if you're traveling around the world and you want to find Bitcoiners, freedom-minded people, homesteaders, people who are into, you know, things that you're into, right? Then this is the place to find those people and to build those communities. It's got a calendar, it's got basic posts, it's got a map that we're working to build out, not to compete with Google, but to highlight things that would actually be useful to a Bitcoiner. So like maybe you don't want to eat seed oils, like myself, for example. So we're going to have restaurants that are seed oil free. We're going to have gyms. We're going to have places that accept Bitcoin. So we really want to help kind of bootstrap and empower Bitcoiners and Bitcoin communities to thrive. Yeah, not a ton of activity yet. We're still working out kinks and building it out, but I think the vision is good, and I'm excited to see what we can do with it. So you know, check it out, come and build with us, and check out Nostr just in general. Nostr is quite cool, so definitely worth a dive if you haven't done so.
Well, that sounds great. People can check it out at satlantis.io. And looking at the page right now, it looks pretty good. Although, if it's
Yeah.
596 degrees Fahrenheit here in Las Vegas, we're in a lot of trouble. We're in a lot of trouble. But yeah, better stay inside. Stay inside. Air conditioning.
Stay inside.
Uh, but
Hey,
no, it sounds
one
great.
question.
Go ahead,
Can
Josh.
I quickly ask you before we go? So that page there, how much is sitting on Nostr? Like, what does Nostr have to do with this particular?
Yeah. So, well, so we are kind of pioneering a new event. Nostr is just different types of events. So all of the data is essentially like a blob of JSON that's got a signature and a public key. So with this other guy, Arcanox, who's been pretty active in Nostr, we created something called a place event. And so that is a way to you know, create Nostr events that are geolocation based. And then on that, you know, place event, you can then attach other events that reference it. So like, you know, you can make comments about that city and you can attach those to that event, for example. So yeah, I mean, basically all of the information that is like undergirding the application is Nostr. Now we have made one decision that I think, you know, is a little controversial in the Nostr community. We're not directly interacting with relays. The user experience that I've found tends to be kind of rough with Nostr clients, and I think part of that is due to the reliance on relays. So basically, we're building what's sort of more like a traditional web application. We have a backend, we have an API. It's a REST-based API, because all Nostr relays are using WebSockets. which are a bit hard to work with, and your page can break. And for example, if you leave your computer and come back to it, and you go back to the page, the WebSocket connections will be dead, but you won't realize it. So there's some difficulties with using WebSockets. So this was a design choice that I made that, we'll see if it ultimately was the right decision. But our hope and our goal here is to take the benefits of Nostr, but provide an experience and a UX that is more familiar and more responsive and more like a traditional web application. So there's some trade-offs, but that's what we're doing. But all events that you create on there are published to Nostr relays. They get disseminated or across the network. We're ingesting events, so we're definitely interoperable. We're not like adding or doing other weird things. All the data is Nostr. So
Wow, that's
yeah.
wild. Make protocols on the internet great again. That's
Yes. Yep. Yeah, it's exciting.
RSS, Nostr. Let's go.
Yep.
It sounds very cool. And of course, we're big fans of Nostr here. Fiat Jaff was working with Ben on Diagon Alley before he discovered and developed Nostr. And then we have some of the world's first tutorials here created by Ben Ark about how to use Nostr. So it's pretty classic stuff. But thanks to everybody for joining us. I'm going to go check out the chat later, but it's a great time to give us a thumbs up. Or if you made it here to the end of the show, you could always give us a wave in the chat or in the comments below. Thanks to everybody for watching. Thanks to our guests for joining us. And until next time, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.